What is going on, you guys? Alex back here with a brand new video, and today we're going to be going through all 30 NBA teams, and I'm going to be giving them a grade for this year's NBA trade deadline, and we're going to jump right into it, starting off with the Atlanta Hawks. I'm not impressed. D-. Why did they get rid of DeAndre Hunter? Why did they just sell off Bogdanovic? This is a team that does not own their own first-round pick this year. The San Antonio Spurs have all the rights to their first-round pick. I don't get it. Why would you just sell off DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovic, who isn't having his best year, but he's still a valuable piece to this rotation? I don't get it. Currently, the Atlanta Hawks are 24-28. They're the 9th seed in the East. They continuously keep getting worse, and they just made themselves worse by getting rid of these two guys, but specifically DeAndre Hunter, having the best year of his career. He finally figured it out, averaging 19 points per game, was going to be sixth man of the year. I know Jalen Johnson got hurt for the rest of the year a few weeks ago. Maybe that was kind of the beginning of the Atlanta Hawks being like, all right, this season has no meaning. Let's just get some value back and some trades. I don't know, because they don't own their own pick, so it's not like them tanking is going to warrant anything. I don't get it. The Atlanta Hawks are like, you know what? We don't care anymore. But now I'm hearing Trae Young might be disgruntled. I'm hearing that Trae Young might be the next man out this coming offseason. I don't know. The Atlanta Hawks are kind of a mess right now, and this just kind of proves it because they don't even have their draft pick, and they're just selling off guys, especially DeAndre Hunter. He was playing awesome. I honestly do not get their deadline at all. But moving on to the Boston Celtics, I give them a B+. They didn't really do anything, but not like they really needed to. They just got rid of Jaden Springer's money. He was making $4 million, but if they kept him, it was going to be a penalty of $15 million because, you know, they're well into that second tax apron. Don't really have wiggle room at all. They do pick up Torrey Craig in the buyout market, but that's not what this video is about. But they do a little bit of something. But trade deadline-wise, I give them a B+. This is a team that is struggling on and off this year. A really bad loss to the Dallas Mavericks a few nights ago, but they're still 36-16, second seed in the East. They're struggling for them, but not like they really had to do anything. I give them a B+. The Brooklyn Nets did absolutely nothing. They made their moves, a few months ago, getting rid of Schroeder, getting rid of DFS, but coming into the deadline, they're keeping their guys. They didn't get rid of Cam Johnson, which I was kind of surprised about. I was thinking a team maybe like the Memphis Grizzlies would have gone out and tried to snag Cam Johnson. Instead, they go the Marvin Bagley route. We'll talk about the Grizzlies later. I don't know. The Brooklyn Nets, they're 18-34. They're doing better in their tank. They're doing better in their capture the flag. Still not anywhere close to the Wizards or down there near the Pelicans or Jazz out west. But overall, they're tanking kind of where they want to be. They just got rid of Ben Simmons. They just bought him out. They're doing their thing. I was just surprised they didn't try to sell off any other pieces. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets, they give one of the they have one of the more interesting deadlines. I give them a B-. They bring in Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, Yusuf Nurkic, some draft capital, which is really good. They're nowhere near the OKC Thunder, but when you go a few notches down, the Charlotte Hornets are one of the better teams with draft capital in the next few years and going a little bit long term. Again, no one's near Sam Presti and the OKC Thunder, so I'm not putting them in that conversation. But when you go a few rungs below, the Charlotte Hornets, they look pretty good with their draft capital. And this deadline kind of helped them out with that. Outgoing, they get rid of Mark Williams, Cody Martin, Micic. I don't know. I want to talk about the Lakers trade and Hornets trade more when I get to the Lakers. But them bringing in Dalton Knecht is going to be really nice alongside LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Cam Reddish. He's always someone who I continue to keep faith for. It's kind of hard continuously when he continues to not really grow into much every location he goes to across the association, but I still hold hope for Cam Reddish. And then bringing in Yusuf Nurkic, that's just because they got rid of Mark Williams, which I thought getting rid of Mark Williams wasn't a terrible choice, but I don't know. He fits your timeline in Charlotte. Maybe they just didn't want to pay him. They move him to LA, but I love bringing in Dalton Knecht, a sniper who can play alongside LaMelo Ball, one of the best passers, playmakers in the league. Yusuf Nurkic, obviously, he's just there for the right now, taking over that center position because they got rid of Mark Williams. They needed a body. They also help out the Phoenix Suns by getting rid of Yusuf Nurkic, who didn't want to be there anymore. They're just kind of taking on that money. I give them a B-. Nothing crazy, but they made some moves to help out their future and also just, have a serviceable center for the rest of this year, and we'll see what happens going forward. The Chicago Bulls get a D. They waited 2 long to get rid of Zach LaVine. I've made a video on this with the Fox and LaVine trade. I'm not really impressed. But at the end of the day, it was time to get rid of Zach LaVine. They made that move. It should have been a year or two prior. They would have got a lot more value for Zach. But at this point, they just needed to get rid of him. The Bulls bring in their own first-round pick. They get that back. That's going to be pretty good. The Bulls are 22-30, kind of holding on to that 10th seed in the play-in right now. I'm looking at it. I'm assuming the 76ers hopefully jump them. I'm sure the Bulls want that. But also the Bulls are kind of a mess. They have a hodgepodge of different guards on this team. Giddey, Ayo Kobe White, Lonzo Ball, they just re-upped him. They're just a weird team. And then also, why do they still have Vucevic? I wanted Vucevic to go to the Warriors. I wanted the Warriors to make one more leap, one more move to really solidify what they're trying to do these next 2 years. They don't do that. Really, no team goes after Vooch. And it's not even a lot of money. It's 2 years, $20 million each year with the new CBA, new money in the league. That's not a lot on the books. Just no team went out and made it. And the Bulls, I guess, weren't super aggressive in trying to get rid of Vucevic. But obviously, keeping him on the team but moving Zach LaVine makes no sense. The Bulls are a mess. I will say that continuously until they prove me otherwise. I give them a D. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they are our first A+ of the video. They get rid of Caris LeVert, who's good. Don't get me wrong. They get rid of Georges Niang, a few picks, and they bring in DeAndre Hunter. I talked about this when we talked about Atlanta. This is a man who's having the best season of his entire career, locks up on defense, gives you buckets, and now he's going to one of the best teams in the entire league, the 42-10 Cleveland Cavaliers. And they don't even have to give up too much. They give up just enough to bring in DeAndre Hunter. It's awesome. The Cleveland Cavaliers right now have one of the best rotations in the entire league, and they already had one of the best rotations, but now they just add to that. We have Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. The defense, the offense, just everything in that starting five, it's lovely. They do lose a little bit of depth because Niang and LeVert were just good depth pieces, but you just bring in someone who's way better than both of them. A+ for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Moving on to the Dallas Mavericks, they're going to be our first F of the video. So we go from an A+ to an F. If I could give a 0, a Z, I don't know why I said 0, that's not in the alphabet. If I could give them a Z, if that was a letter grade, I would. The more I think about this, and I have another video coming out about this trade. Once it hits a week later from the trade, I'm going to do the Luka Doncic AD trade 1 week later because I want to give just some more thoughts on this overall thing. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, there's not a good excuse you could ever give me. I understand somewhat of the premise. You know, you're trying to win right now, and you don't believe Luka is that right now, which just makes no sense to me. Or long term, you don't believe Luka's going to take care of his body. Sure, but I don't care if Luka is 350 pounds, 400 pounds, maybe I would care if he was 500 pounds, but you get my point. I don't care. Luka Doncic is a generational talent. I heard someone say this somewhere on social media, and I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, he is already a Hall of Famer. I never really thought about it, but Luka Doncic is already a Hall of Famer. There's not people like Luka that come around this game that often. A bona fide top 3 player. Last year at one point, he was my best player in the league. Luka Doncic is amazing. And now you lose that. Nico Harrison's getting death threats now. He had he got hired more security for the games. Dallas is in shambles, and I understand why. But if there's any silver lining, which there's not really a silver lining here, at least you brought in Anthony Davis, who when healthy and is at his peak, is a top 10 player still, top 12 maybe. They're believing in Kyrie. They got good depth. Lively and Gafford are awesome. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm trying to make the best of this, but I can't. We all know it makes no sense. They get an F. Nico Harrison, he's got to be careful going around Dallas. Moving on to the Denver Nuggets, they make no moves, which I was a little bit surprised about. Obviously, they're playing really good ball compared to where they start the season. They're the third seed out west. They're 33-19. They started off the year atrocious, but now Westbrook and Jokic know how to play with each other. They're playing awesome. And then right now you have MPJ, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon, being consistent and being overall good players. But how long will that last? I don't know, because they are very streaky guys, them three. I just wish they made another move because, their backup center is still just not really there. It's Zeke Naji and then DeAndre Jordan. Neither of them you should really be relying on at this point in their career, especially DeAndre Jordan, and then Zeke Naji is just not that good. They made no moves, not like they really needed to, but I was thinking just maybe they make a little bit of something to, higher up their odds, bolster up their bench unit. They didn't. Not the end of the world. I give them a C. Like it's whatever. It's mid. They didn't do nothing. The Detroit Pistons get a B+. They just brought in a few bodies, Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, bring in a couple picks. They only got rid of a second-round pick. Dennis Schroeder, I want to talk about him for 1 second. This man got traded 4 times in 24 hours. He went from the Warriors to the Heat, to the Jazz, to the Pistons. And then 5 times in the last month, or 2 months, if you talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Whatever. This man, Dennis Schroeder, got thrown around the league at the deadline, and he ends up in a spot that's going to be a solid fit for him. Right now, obviously, the Detroit Pistons have no real timetable on Jaden Ivey. He could be out the rest of the year or barely make it back for something. I don't even know. He had a really serious injury. I doubt he's going to be back this year, but there's been no timetable on his return. But they bring in Dennis Schroeder, who can, kind of play that, not role that Jaden Ivey had, but just bring another guard to this team where they're lacking a guard because of Ivey's injury. Lindy Waters is a good shooter. Solid deadline. I give them a B+. They brought in a few depth guys to help a Detroit Pistons team that is trying to just, continuously get better. They're 26-26 right now. They're the 6th seed out east, a playoff team. Shout out to them. They make a couple moves to get a little bit better, add some depth with the Ivey absence. I respect it. The Golden State Warriors get a B. They bring in someone that, helps Stephen Curry and Draymond Green for the next 3 years. They give Jimmy Butler a contract extension. It lines up with Curry's contract. It lines up with Dre's contract. They're just buying into the right now. Currently, the Warriors are the 11th seed. They're 25-26. If you just look at it, I said this in my video, just stat for stats with Andrew Wiggins and Jimmy Butler. There's not a lot of difference there. But me personally, Jimmy Butler's been dogging it this year. He's been making Miami a living hell. He wanted to get out of there. He now goes to a team that gives him money and also gives him a lot of floor spacing with Stephen Curry. It just kind of, Jimmy can take a step back and not, really have to worry about much. Just be a bucket and, play defense and just be Jimmy Butler. But I think come playoff time, assuming they make it, Jimmy Butler's going to get back to being playoff Jimmy. I think he still has it in him. He's just been dogging it this year because he didn't want to be in Miami anymore. So I don't think it's fair just to look at the stats between these two guys. I gave him a B. They made a move that makes Steph Curry happy, makes Draymond Green happy, bringing in a name, a star in there, and I think he still has some left in him. We'll see how it transpires, though, the rest of this season. The Houston Rockets get a B+. They didn't really do anything. They just helped facilitate that trade with the Boston Celtics for Jaden Springer, but then they cut Jaden Springer. They also bring in Tyler Zeller, or Cody Zeller. Shout out former Boston Celtic Tyler Zeller. Cody Zeller, I don't know how he's still in the league either. They didn't do anything, but I give them a B+ because they didn't really have to do anything. They have a really good thing going right now. They're 32-19, 4th seed in the West. They're awesome. Moving on to the Indiana Pacers, they really do absolutely nothing. They just dump off James Wiseman to Toronto, which I believe they cut James Wiseman, so I kind of feel bad for him. He tore his Achilles. Now he's out of a job. But either way, the Pacers don't really do anything. I expect them to be more active in the offseason, seeing, if there's a disgruntled star out there that they can pair up with Pascal and Tyrese Halliburton. I didn't really have too many expectations coming into the deadline. I was hearing the rumors about Miles Turner, which makes 0 sense because they're playing the best basketball of their season. They're 29-21. They've won 7 out of their last 10 games. They're finally figuring it out, the 4th seed in the East. This is a team that was extremely down bad for most of the season so far, but they've started to turn it around in the last 2 or 3 weeks. They're playing really, really good basketball. Didn't really have many expectations. I give them a B-. Moving on to the LA Clippers, I give them a flat B. They didn't really do too much, but they made just enough to be a little bit better. They bring in some depth like Drew Eubanks, Bogdanovich, who's been, pretty bad in Atlanta like we talked about earlier, but maybe on a new team in a new setting that can turn around for him. They also bring in Patty Mills, Marshawn Beauchamp, which nothing crazy, but he's a young guy in the league. Maybe he can be something down the line for the Clippers. I don't really know. They get rid of PJ Tucker, Mo Bamba, Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, Kevin Porter Jr. Many of those guys just don't really get a lot of minutes anymore, or diminished minutes, or have been really bad. I think the Clippers upgraded at the deadline. I gave them a B. This is a team that has been surprisingly good. They had no real expectations, from me at least, coming into the year. They're currently 28-23. I think they did good. I give them a B. Moving on to the LA Clippers. A plus, 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 and plus. A plus. The LA Clippers had LA Clippers. Excuse me. The LA Lakers had the best deadline in the entire league. Obviously, Luka Doncic. I don't really want to dive into this again. I've talked about this so many times. But they bring in Luka Doncic, which obviously is going to help the right now, but it helps the future. They're set for their next 10, 12 years of their franchise, assuming they give him all the money he wants, right? They're set. The LA Lakers are set. But not only that, they needed a center. Their best center on the roster when this trade went down after getting rid of Anthony Davis was maybe Jackson Hayes. Jared Vanderbilt's just a good big. He's not really a center, though. They had no center. They had no real center on this team. They bring in Mark Williams, who not only is a real center and has had some really good games as of late, but he also fits the timeline of Luka Doncic. He's maybe 23 years old? Mark Williams, he fits the timeline of this team perfectly with Luka Doncic. They get A plus times 10. They had an absolute flawless deadline. They also bring in some solid depth with Maxi Kleber, just a nice little bucket getter. Markieff Morris probably won't touch the court much, but he's back on the roster. It does suck to see them just getting rid of Dalton Knecht after drafting him this year. Or Max Christie was a solid piece for them. He started to be in their starting rotation. The rest of these guys, obviously AD is a tough one, but when you're swapping Luka Doncic, I don't even really have to talk about that. The rest of these Cam Reddish, Jalen Hood-Schifino, they weren't really that good. But yeah, Dalton Knecht kind of does suck. But, you got it. You brought in Luka. Mark Williams is going to be a perfect fit for this team right now in the future. You're not really going to be too upset about getting rid of someone like Dalton Knecht, especially with everything else going on in LA. Moving on to the Memphis Grizzlies. They're a little bit weird to me. They made at a very basic level, cap flexibility move by getting rid of Marcus Smart. That's really what it is. And also, you have guys like Vince Williams, who is hurt right now, but, he's better than Marcus Smart for this team. You have Jalen Wells, the rookie, who has proved to be better than Marcus Smart. I know different positions, but, there's only so many minutes in a game. Jalen Wells has deserved those minutes. G.G. Jackson is back from his injury. He's going to be playing a lot. I think when it came down to it, Marcus Smart has played 40 games in the 2 seasons he's been in Memphis. Never really injured in Boston, or if he was, he played through it. He's getting a little bit older now. He's been just continuously been getting hurt in Memphis. And it just hasn't really worked out. Kind of sucks. I feel bad for him. He gets sent to the Wizards, but it's kind of weird. I don't think the Grizzlies had to make this trade because they are playing great basketball. What are they? They're the second seed out west, 35-16. This is not a move they had to make, but I guess, they didn't want to be a team that just keeps a lot of money on the books. They just decided to get rid of Marcus Smart. That's what happened. And then they also bring in Marvin Bagley and Johnny Davis, 2 guys that are on expiring deals. Bagley's going to be a solid piece for this year, just a body to put on the court. But again, it's a little bit weird seeing them just, throw Marcus Smart away. Just never really worked out with the injuries. And also, they just have a lot of young guys coming up that are going to be worthy of more minutes than where Marcus Smart is right now. I think that at a very basic level, that's what it is. They don't want to pay him for these next 2 years. And also, there's about 2 or 3 guys that are going to be worthy of more minutes than Marcus Smart because they've proved it. That's really what it is. But I give him a C+. Miami Heat, B+. Honestly, I might move it up to an A- just for the fact of this. Jimmy Butler tried to do everything possible to get out of South Beach. He eventually got his wish, but his trade value was so low that it could have been a really bad return. And it's not like it was a crazy return, but they bring in someone in Andrew Wiggins who's going to be a bucket right away. He's going to play defense right away. He's going to fit into this Heat culture off the rip. They lucked out by bringing in someone who's going to bring just good minutes, good rotational minutes, good starting minutes to this team right away. That's really where my entire grade's coming from because Jimmy Butler wanted out. That was inevitable. But the return that Pat Riley gets and just bringing in someone who's a good basketball player in Andrew Wiggins, you just have to be happy about that because it could have been so much worse. could have been so much worse. Like, you could have got Bradley Beal's massive contract. And I just think right now, Bradley Beal is washed. He's not playing good basketball. Andrew Wiggins just does his role. He'll fit in alongside Tyler Hero. He'll fit in alongside Bam Adebayo, just play that good wing role. I like it. For what it is, I like it. I'm gonna stick with a B+, though. The A's are meant just for really good teams and good deals. I'll leave it at a B+. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks, I give it like a C-D. I have D written down in my Google Doc, but I think I'm going to move it up to a C-. Getting rid of Khris Middleton, pure money move. They wanted to get out of that second tax apron. They wanted to have some more cap flexibility, which they did. Didn't really do anything else at the deadline. They bring in Kyle Kuzma, which, I mean, he's younger than Khris Middleton. Not nearly as good of a shooter, but he's younger. He's healthier. And I think that's what it came down to. Besides getting cap flexibility, which definitely was an interest of Milwaukee, they bring in someone who's 29 versus 33 or 34 in Khris Middleton, and he's just been on and off injured for the past 2-3 years. At a very basic level, that's what happened here. But now you have to be worried. Like, will Giannis be pissed off? If Kyle Kuzma does not turn back into, the Kyle Kuzma we saw a few years ago, because he's been really, really bad this year. But if he does not turn back into the Kyle Kuzma we saw a few years ago, and he's just not good, this might piss off Giannis to the point where this coming off season might be a very interesting one for Giannis in the choice for what he wants to do with this franchise. But moving on to the Timberwolves, they do absolutely nothing. I just give them a basic, C. They didn't really have to do anything. They're 29-23. They're the 6th seed out west. And obviously, it would have been cool to see them make a little bit of a move there or two. But they have real no cap flexibility. This is a team a lot like the Indiana Pacers. Come the offseason, there's going to be a lot more moving parts to this team. They just made the trade before the season started with Cat and Julius Randle. Deadline-wise, there's a team that they have no expectations this year. There's nothing there. They're going to be a playoff team, playing team, definitely make a playoff series, probably get bounced out round one. They're looking for the offseason to make the moves they want to make. I just give them a C. The New Orleans Pelicans, B-. They had to dump off Brandon Ingram. They finally did it. I think they waited a little too long because the return they get, Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, a pick or two. The return they get is just nothing really that good because they waited so long, and it's an expiring deal. And it would have just been malpractice to keep BI on the roster just because you want to get something back. They do get a little bit of something. Nothing really where if you traded him a year ago, you would have got a lot more. But they had to trade him. It would have been stupid to keep on the roster because he would just walk this summer. But they move him. They trade BI to Toronto. We'll get there in a little bit. That's an interesting one as well. They just get a little bit of value back. Nothing really, but it's a move they had to make before the deadline came and went. The New York Knicks get a C, not because they did anything bad, not that they really did anything. They bring in DeLon Wright. They trade Jericho Sims. I just kind of push it down to a C because I don't really think they can afford just dumping off Jericho Sims like that. Mitchell Robinson is injured more than he plays. You cannot rely on him. And you just need all the bodies you can get. They really made no move here. They get rid of Jericho Sims. They bring in DeLon Wright, who's been really bad this year. I just think you keep the body. You keep the body. You need all the size you can get in New York. I don't really get that one. The OKC Thunder, a B+. They didn't really do anything, but a lot like the Boston Celtics, they don't really have to do anything. But for the OKC Thunder, that stands even more. They had to do absolutely nothing. Last night, Chet Holmgren came back. He only played like 20 minutes, just getting his legs back underneath him. But overall, they needed to do absolutely nothing. They facilitated a trade with the Pelicans to bring in Daniel Tice. They cut him, and then they bring in some picks as well. Sam Presti always feeding his team those assets. B+, nothing really to talk about. The Orlando Magic, they did absolutely nothing, and I'm extremely disappointed in this. This is a team that is 25-28. They continuously get worse as the year goes on. I don't know. They should have done something. This is a team that should have not bought in. They're not a win now team, but they should have just bought in a little bit to be a little bit better because they're still a good team and they have really no offensive flow at all. No one that can really space the floor enough. I give them a D-. Moving on to the 76ers, I give them a C. They make a few moves just to get rid of some money with Caleb Martin, KJ Martin, Reggie Jackson, some guys they just didn't want to pay anymore. They bring in Quentin Grimes, which I think is better than all three of those guys, someone who proved himself so far this year in Dallas to be a good rotational piece on that team. Solid move. I give them a C. The Phoenix Suns, D minus. And my grade mostly comes from the fact that they have completely messed up this team. Kevin Durant almost got traded. Bradley Beal, they wanted out of there so bad. Two guys that now are going to be disgruntled coming back to this team. They bring in Cody Martin. They bring in Micic. They bring in some picks. They get rid of Yusuf Nurkic, which was a must. They believe Mason Plumlee is better, which I agree with. They also got Nick Richards about a month ago in a trade with the Hornets. Overall, they didn't really do too much. They did just enough to, make a few moves and also for me to give them a bad grade. But at the end of the day, they looked to trade Kevin Durant. They looked to trade Bradley Beal, and neither of those guys wanted to be traded, especially Kevin Durant. That's going to mess some things up. And also, their roster's just not as good as I thought it was going to be coming into this year. This is another team come the offseason, has a lot of questions to be answered. Do they trade Booker? Do they trade Durant? What do they do with the rest of this team? That's an offseason thing. I give them a D minus though, because at this point, their season is pretty much a lost cause. The Portland Trailblazers, they did absolutely nothing, but they're playing some of the best ball we've ever seen from them post Damian Lillard. I don't know why I said ever seen, because it's only been 2 years since Damian's been gone. But they were really bad last year. They're 23-29 so far this year. They have won 9 out of their last 10 games, which just has come out of nowhere. They're finally figuring something out there, and I think it's due to the talent they do have. They have a great center lineup with Ayton, Klingon, and then also my guy, Robert Williams. Scoot Henderson has been playing some good ball. They have Jeremy Grant. They have Anthony Simons. They have Shaedon Sharpe. They have good talent on this team, and now it's finally starting to come to life. I'm sure they want to tank a little bit more. They are, 23-29. That's not terrible, but they didn't feel like they needed to make a move. I don't really disagree with that. I just give them a flat C because there is talent that is starting to grow on this roster. They just want to see how it plays out the rest of this year. If they should have done anything, maybe try to move off Jeremy Grant, but it's whatever. The Sacramento Kings, I've talked about this team already in a video with the De'Aaron Fox trade. I give them a C just because they get a lot of fake first-round picks that on paper you're like, 3 first-round picks. No. There's only one real first-round pick there that might mean something. It's the 2031 Minnesota Timberwolves first-round pick. But again, the Timberwolves might be good in 2031. So none of these first-round picks could mean anything. They bring in Zach LaVine, which is a good, not lateral move. Of course, De'Aaron Fox is better than Zach LaVine. But Zach LaVine is having a really good underrated season. It's a good move to keep the star level somewhat even in Sacramento. They bring in also Jonas Valanciunas, which is a good bench center. But it does not answer their lack of defense. Sabonis can't play defense. No one on this roster is really a good defender besides Keon Ellis. And then Jonas Valanciunas does not help that case at all. They do bring in a young guy in Jake LaRavia. I like that. Maybe a little something there. Just adds a little bit of youth to this team. Adds also a little bit of depth as well. Overall, though, I give them a C at the deadline. The San Antonio Spurs, they're the next A+ of the video. They bring in De'Aaron Fox. This is all I'm going to say. They bring in De'Aaron Fox, and they don't have to trade any of their youth. They have Jeremy Sohan. They have Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. They also keep Stephon Castle. They had to move none of their youth at all. A+, and then they bring in De'Aaron Fox. They're going to be a super team very, very soon because they also own Atlanta's pick, which we talked about earlier. They decided to tankathon for really no good reason because they don't own their pick. The San Antonio Spurs could end up with a top 5 pick and have their next star alongside Wemby and De'Aaron Fox. It's insane. Moving on to the Toronto Raptors, B-. They bring in Brandon Ingram. They're taking a flyer on him. They didn't have to give up much. I was hearing a little bit of rumor rumor's not even a word, that they might find common ground and be able to re-sign Brandon Ingram this offseason. I don't really know why he'd want to stay in Toronto. There's a lot of overlap there with wings. Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Grady Dick, and then Brandon Ingram. There's a lot of youth at that, wing, guard. Really, that entire team, there's a lot of overlap there. I don't know really where he fits. Obviously, he's better than some of the guys I just mentioned, but does he really want to be there? I think he wants to go to a more competitive team. We'll see. If he gets his money, he gets his money. I'm sure he'll stay. But the Toronto Raptors are taking a flyer on being able to re-sign Brandon Ingram. I give him a B- though. It's a shot in the dark. Didn't really have to give up too much. I respect it. The Utah Jazz get a B Danny Ainge was just facilitating trades. That's really all he did. He helped out with the Heat. He helped out with the Lakers in that Luka trade. They bring in KJ Martin, Josh Richardson, Mo Bamba, Jalen Hood-Schifino, and they also bring in a good amount of second-round picks. It's the Danny Ainge way. They bring in bad contracts that no one really wanted, or just, contracts no one really wanted anymore. They get a few picks to help out these teams, facilitate trades. Danny Ainge just stockpiling his assets, and this is a Utah team that is not good. I thought maybe they were going to try to get rid of Colin Sexton, John Collins, kind of dive into that tank more. They didn't. Not the end of the world. They're bad either way. Danny Ainge is just doing his Danny Ainge thing. And then last but not least, we have the Washington Wizards, which were way more active than I thought they were going to be at the deadline. And I give them an A-. They stockpile a lot of assets that they can move on at a later date, that being Khris Middleton, who does have a player option for this coming summer. But I'm assuming he'll buy into that because not many teams are going to give him, like the $30 million that he's up for this summer. And then they also bring in Marcus Smart. And then both of those trades, they acquire first-round picks to take on those guys. So they bring in draft capital. They also bring in some talent that they can move at a later date or maybe help out if the Wizards want to start to kind of fast-track a little bit their rebuild. I don't know why they'd want to do that. But at first, I thought these moves were weird. But they bring in draft capital to take on some bad contracts and players that teams didn't really want anymore. They also bring in a young guy in A.J. Johnson, who is just a major athletic freak. Maybe he could turn into something in Washington. At the end of the day, they get rid of Kyle Kuzma. He didn't want to be there anymore. The Wizards didn't want him anymore. They dump off some other guys in Valanciunas, Patrick Baldwin, Johnny Davis. I thought it was a good deadline. It's going to be weird to see Marcus Smart, my guy, in a Wizards jersey if he ever really touches the court for them. Same thing with Khris Middleton. But again, they bring in draft capital to take on some contracts, and then also they can move these contracts and also some of these picks at a later date to get some more assets. The Wizards have set themselves up nicely for what they're trying to do, a complete rebuild. And also it gives more minutes to guys like Jordan Poole and also Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, guys that are trying to rebuild around. I like it. But anyways, this has been an extremely long video. I have been talking for what feels like forever. That has been all 30 NBA teams and me giving them a grade on their 2025 NBA trade deadline. Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Who are some of your winners? Who are some of your losers of the trade deadline? I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say. Anyways, hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. I'll be back very soon, and like always, peace out.